When I woke up in the recovery room after emergency surgery, my phone was buzzing uncontrollably. 14 missed calls from my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, and 20 text messages. I thought something had gone wrong at the hospital, but the moment I listened to her frantic voicemail, my blood ran cold. Audrey, your kids are sitting on my front porch crying. Your parents drove off 2 hours ago. Barely able to stand and still dizzy from anesthesia, I called my mother. Her tone was completely casual. Well, your sister needed us to drive her to her emergency hair appointment before her date. Audrey. You were in surgery anyway, so it's not like you were using the house. By 9 p.m. that exact same evening, despite my stitches, I had called a locksmith, removed my parents from every emergency contact list, and rewritten my entire life. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Audrey Lane. I'm 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my life has been dictated by an unwritten rule in our household. My younger sister, Chloe, comes first. At 26, Chloe is the indisputable golden child. If she needs money, my parents pull from their savings. If she has a minor crisis, the world stops. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the reliable, self-sufficient older daughter who never asked for anything. So, when my doctor told me I needed an emergency gallbladder removal, I hesitated to even ask my parents for help. But with my husband deployed overseas, I had no choice. I needed someone I trusted to watch my 2 young kids, Leo, who's 7, and Maya, who's only 4, for just 6 hours while I was in surgery. When I finally called my parents, they seemed surprisingly enthusiastic. My mother squeezed my hand and said, Audrey, of course we'll be there. Family takes care of family. You just focus on your surgery and we'll make sure the kids are safe and happy at home. They are our absolute top priority. For the first time in years, I felt a wave of relief washing over me. I believed her. I packed the kids' favorite snacks, laid out their games, and left my house keys on the kitchen counter, genuinely believing my children were in the safest hands possible. I had no idea that the moment I was wheeled into the operating room, my parents' promise would completely evaporate. As the nurses rolled my gurney down the quiet hallway toward the operating theater, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Surgery is always terrifying, but knowing Leo and Maya were safe at home with their grandparents gave me a profound sense of peace. I focused on that warmth, letting the anesthesia take over as everything faded to black. When I finally opened my eyes, the world was a blurry, disorienting haze. The fluorescent lights of the post-op recovery room pierced through my headache, and a sharp, stinging pain radiated across my abdomen with every shallow breath. I reached blindly for the bedside table, my hand trembling as I grabbed my phone to check the time. It was 1:45 p.m. That was when I saw the screen. 14 missed calls. Every single one was from Mrs. Gable, my sweet 68-year-old next-door neighbor. Below the calls was a barrage of frantic text messages. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, instantly overriding the lingering drowsiness of the medication. Cold panic flooded my veins as I pressed my phone to my ear and dialed her back. She picked up on the very first ring, her voice breathless and trembling with emotion. Audrey. Oh, thank God you're awake. Are you all right? Mrs. Gable, what's going on? I rasped, my throat raw from the intubation tube. Is everything okay? Audrey, sweetie, I'm so sorry to tell you this, she stammered, her voice shaking. I was out watering my garden when I heard crying. I walked over to your house, and Audrey, Leo, and Maya were sitting all alone on your front porch in their pajamas. They were terrified. Your parents drove off over 2 hours ago. My heart plummeted into my stomach, the physical pain in my abdomen completely overshadowed by a surge of pure adrenaline. Mrs. Gable, please, are they okay? I choked out, gripping the hospital sheet so tightly my knuckles turned white. They're with me now, Audrey. I brought them into my kitchen and gave them lunch, but they were so confused. They said Grandma and Grandpa told them to play quietly and then just walked out the front door. I thanked her through choked tears, promised I would figure this out immediately, and hung up. With shaking fingers, I dialed my mother's number. It rang 4 times before she finally answered. "Oh, Audrey, how did the surgery go?" Her tone was airy, completely lighthearted, as if she were calling to chat about the weekend weather. "Where are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling with rage. "Where are my children, Mom?" There was a brief pause on the line, followed by a small, exasperated sigh. "Oh, don't start dramatic screaming, Audrey. Chloe had an absolute crisis. Her hairstylist called with a last-minute cancellation for a full color and blowout right before her big anniversary date tonight. You know how important this evening is for her." I stared at the ceiling tile, unable to process the sheer absurdity of what I was hearing. "You left a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old completely unsupervised in an empty house for a hair appointment. We turned on a movie and left juice boxes on the counter." My mother snapped back, her voice turning defensive. "They were perfectly fine for a little while. You were in surgery anyway, so it's not like you were using the house. Honestly, you're completely overreacting because of the hospital drugs. Chloe needed us more today." The line went dead as my mother hung up on me. Sitting in that cold hospital room, the fog of anesthesia was completely replaced by a freezing, crystal-clear fury. Ignoring the nurse who rushed in to urge me back into bed, I ripped the 4-line from my arm and demanded my discharge papers. I signed a release against medical advice, gritting my teeth through every sharp stab of pain in my abdomen. I couldn't waste another second. I called an Uber directly to Mrs. Gable's house. Walking up her driveway, seeing my sweet Leo and Maya running out to hug me while clutching their favorite stuffed animals, tears spilled down my cheeks. They were safe, but they were shaken. Leo looked at me with wide, guilty eyes and whispered, "Mommy, did we do something bad? Grandma said we had to stay outside if we were going to cry." Hearing those words ignited a fire in me that completely burned away any remaining loyalty I had toward my parents. After thanking Mrs. Gable, I brought my children back into our house and locked the door. Standing in my kitchen, looking at the 2 juice boxes sitting untouched on the counter, I realized the full danger of what had just happened. My parents had spare keys to my home. They were listed as my primary emergency contacts, held medical powers of attorney in case something went wrong during my surgery, and were named as legal guardians for my children in my original will. They had complete, unrestricted access to my life, and they had proven that my children's safety meant less to them than Chloe's hair appointment. Standing right there in my living room, clutching my surgical bandages, I pulled out my phone and dialed an emergency mobile locksmith. Every single lock on my house was changing tonight. The next morning, my entire body throbbed with a deep, aching pain, but my mind was sharper than ever. Before the sun even fully rose, I sat at my dining room table with my laptop and a steaming cup of tea, ready to dismantle every privilege my parents had ever been granted in my life. My first call was to Leo's elementary school and Maya's preschool. I spoke directly with the administrators, updating our emergency pickup lists. I gave them explicit instructions. Under no circumstances were my mother or father permitted to pick up my children or even visit them on school grounds. I provided updated photos of both of them to be kept on file at the front desks. Next, I called my estate attorney for my bed. Years ago, my husband and I had drafted a will that named my parents as primary guardians of our children in the event of a tragedy, assuming they would be the safest option. With a steady voice, I instructed my lawyer to draft an immediate amendment. My sister-in-law, a loving and responsible woman who truly valued family, was named the new guardian, and my parents were completely removed from all medical power of attorney documents. Finally, I logged into my bank accounts. My parents had joint emergency access to a high-yield savings account we set aside for the kids' future college funds. Within 3 clicks, their names were permanently scrubbed from the accounts, cutting off any financial bridge between us. By noon, my parents had been completely stripped of their status in my household. They no longer had keys, legal rights, or access to my children. They were officially strangers to our daily life, and they didn't even know it yet. 3 days later, my doorbell camera chime rang through the house. I checked my phone to see my mother and father standing on my front porch, holding a Tupperware container of Chloe's leftover dinner as if it were a peace offering. My mother tried her key in the deadbolt, her smile instantly fading when it refused to turn. She tried again, jiggling the handle in frustration before aggressively pounding on the door. I didn't open it. Instead, I answered through the smart doorbell speaker. "Can I help you?" I asked coldly. "Audrey, what is wrong with your lock?" my mother demanded, her voice rising. "We brought you food, and your key isn't working. Open this door right now." "The locks were changed 3 days ago," I replied calmly. "You abandoned my young children alone on a porch to take Chloe to a hair salon. You are no longer welcome on my property." My father stepped into the camera frame, his face flushed with anger. "You are being completely absurd," he yelled at the small black box. "Chloe needed us. Your neighbor watched them anyway, so no harm was done. You're turning this into a massive drama over a simple hair appointment." When I cut the call, the real campaign began. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up with messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins. My mother had spun a pathetic sob story to the extended family, claiming I was keeping her precious grandchildren away over a minor misunderstanding. I didn't argue. Instead, I uploaded the neighbor's porch camera footage, showing my 4-year-old crying at the door while my parents drove away, directly into the family group chat. The notifications stopped almost instantly. Seeing that raw, unedited footage of 2 small children abandoned on a porch completely dismantled my parents' carefully crafted narrative. The group chat, which had been buzzing with criticism toward me, fell into dead silence. Soon after, private messages from my aunts and uncles began pouring in, expressing absolute disgust at what my parents had done. Chloe's status as the untouchable golden child collapsed overnight. When the extended family learned that my 4-year-old was left sobbing so she wouldn't miss a blowout before a date, the shame was too much for her to bear. She scrubbed her social media accounts and retreated, unable to face the backlash from relatives who had once adored her. My parents tried sending frantic apology texts, claiming they didn't realize how bad it looked, and begging for access to their grandchildren. But the door was permanently closed. I replied with a single, clear boundary. They were no longer a part of our lives, and any further attempt to contact my children would result in a formal restraining order. For 32 years, I allowed myself to be treated as secondary, constantly sacrificing my boundaries to keep the peace in a toxic family dynamic. But the moment their neglect put my children in danger, the spell was broken forever. Now, sitting on my front porch with Leo and Maya playing